Shopping malls after hours are a different world. The food court goes silent. The fountains stop running. The lights dim to a cold, pale glow, just enough to see the outlines of mannequins standing frozen behind dark storefront windows. Security guards walk their routes alone, their footsteps bouncing off polished tile floors that stretch on and on like something out of a dream. Most nights, nothing happens. Most nights, everyone goes home fine. But every once in a while, something happens inside one of those closed malls that nobody can explain. Tonight, I have 3 of those stories for you. Story 1. The janitor's last shift at Westfield Plaza. Marcus had worked the overnight cleaning crew at Westfield Plaza for almost 6 years. He knew the mall the way you know your own house. Every corner, every shortcut. It is every storage closet that stuck when you pulled the handle wrong. He knew where the security cameras had blind spots, which stores smelled like mildew from a slow leak behind the drywall, and exactly which stretch of the east wing felt like strange at night. That last part he tried not to think about. The east wing of Westfield Plaza had been partially closed for over a year. A renovation project that ran out of funding and quietly stalled. Several storefronts sat empty behind metal security grates, the interior stripped bare, full of construction dust and stacked drywall. Management had told the overnight staff they were not to work that section alone. Always go in pairs, they said. Nobody ever explained why beyond a vague liability concern. So Marcus didn't question it. The night everything changed, Marcus was working alone. His usual partner had called in sick and management hadn't bothered to send a replacement. His instructions were clear. Clean the food court, the restrooms, the main atrium, the north corridor. Leave the east wing alone. Be done by 4 a.m. He was almost done. It was 3:15 when he heard the sound. It was coming from the east wing. At first he thought it was a water pipe. A knocking or tapping behind the walls wasn't unusual in an old mall. But this sound wasn't behind the walls. It was on the floor. A slow, deliberate knocking, like knuckles rapping on hollow wood, rhythmic and patient. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more knocks. A pause. He started counting the pauses. They were exactly 4 seconds long. That bothered him more than anything else. Settling buildings don't keep time. Where the metal security grate separating the east wing looked locked. He shone his flashlight through it into the dark hallway beyond. Empty storefronts. Dusty tile. A folding construction table. Nothing that explained the sound. At 3:45, Marcus made a decision he later said he couldn't fully explain. He went to the maintenance closet and found the spare key on its hook, a key that was not supposed to be there, that was supposed to be secured every night. Someone had left it. He unlocked the grate, slid it aside, and stepped into the east wing. The temperature dropped noticeably. The knocking stopped the moment he stepped through the grate. The silence that replaced it felt wrong, thick and close, like the silence inside a sealed room. He walked forward slowly. His flashlight swept across the construction table, stacked drywall, onto a wheelbarrow of old grout. Normal stuff. He reached the midpoint of the east wing, where the hallway opened into a small secondary atrium that had once been anchored by a jewelry kiosk. The kiosk was gone. The floor where it had bolted down just bare concrete, with 4 rusted bolt holes. He swept his light around the atrium. There was someone standing on the far side. Marcus said his brain took several seconds to process it, because the figure was so still, he kept trying to convince himself it was a mannequin or a construction marker. But it wasn't. It was a person, tall, wearing something dark, standing with their back to him, just inside the entrance to one of the stripped storefronts. He called out, "Security, hello? Is someone there?" The figure didn't move. He took 2 steps forward and called out again, louder. His voice echoed off the bare walls in a way that sounded wrong, like it was bouncing back from further away than the walls actually were. The figure turned around. Marcus ran. He said he didn't make a conscious decision. His body just went. He cleared the grate, shoved it closed, and didn't stop until he reached the security booth near the main entrance. He told the overnight guard, a man named Pete, what he'd seen. Pete pulled up the east wing on the security monitor. Empty corridor. Nothing in the atrium. Pete walked the wing himself. Came back 12 minutes later. Reported nothing. The camera footage from the last 2 hours showed nothing entering or leaving that section all night. Marcus quit the following week. He's never gone back. What haunts him most isn't what he saw. It's what he heard in the half second before he ran, a sound coming from the figure. Not a voice exactly, more like a recording of a voice played back wrong, slow and distorted. And buried inside that sound, he says he could just make out 3 knocks. Story 2. She forgot her car keys. Danielle was 24 and working the closing shift at a candle and home goods store. She's never given the mall's real name. She calls it the mall on Route 9, and that's what I'll use here. Her store closed at 9 with the rest of the mall, but closing procedures kept her there until around 10:15 most nights. She was used to being in the mall after close. The janitors would wave at her through the security gate and everything felt perfectly normal. On a Tuesday in November, she finished her closing duties, grabbed her coat and bag, and walked out to the parking structure. She reached into her bag and realized her keys weren't there. She searched every pocket twice. Nothing. She must have set them down somewhere inside. She went back in through the employee entrance with her key card, returned to her store, and did a full sweep. Break room, stock room, behind the register. No keys. Then she remembered. She'd used the staff restroom near the food court around 8 that evening. She'd been rushing because a customer came in right at closing, and she might have set her keys on the edge of the sink and walked out without them. To reach that restroom, she'd have to walk through the public-facing area of the mall, past the closed storefronts, through the dim main corridor, across the atrium. The overnight ambient lighting kept everything visible, just pale and washed out. It's like a photograph exposed a little too long. She walked quickly, and it was fine at first. Quiet and empty, but fine. The store windows reflected her back as she passed. Slightly elongated versions of herself flickering in the dark glass. But that was manageable. She'd done this before. The food court chairs had been stacked on tables the way they always were after close. The overhead lights were on their low overnight setting, warm orange instead of cool white. As she crossed, she noticed one chair was not stacked. It was sitting on the floor at one of the tables, pulled out at an angle, like someone had just stood up. She told herself the janitors had missed it. She went into the women's restroom. The lights came on automatically on a motion sensor. Her keys were on the edge of the third sink from the door, exactly where she'd left them. She grabbed them, exhaled, and headed back out. She stopped in the restroom doorway. The unstacked chair was no longer at the table. It was in the middle of the food court floor, roughly 20 feet from where it had been, placed deliberately. Not at an angle anymore, but positioned precisely, facing the hallway she'd come from, facing the direction she needed to walk. She had heard nothing from the food court while she was in the restroom. No footsteps, no scraping of chair legs. Total silence except for the hum of the lights and a dripping faucet. She made herself walk, not run. She was afraid to run, afraid that running would prompt something to respond. She went hard and steady, eyes forward, not looking at the chair as she passed it. As she went by, she felt with complete certainty that something behind her was watching. The feeling was so specific and so strong that even now, years later, she cannot dismiss it as anxiety. She made it to the employee corridor and drove home without stopping. The next day, co-workers told her the chairs near the center of the food court sometimes drift because the floor is slightly uneven. She wants to believe that. The problem is the direction the chair ended up facing, because even if you account for drift on an uneven surface, a chair doesn't rotate and come to rest pointing precisely at the corridor you're about to walk down. She still works at that mall. She has never stayed past 9:15 again. Story 3. The Boy at the Play Area. This last story comes from Raymond, a mall security guard for nearly a decade. And he's retired now and says he's only comfortable sharing this because enough time has passed. The mall had a children's play area near the east entrance, one of those soft-floored enclosed spaces with foam climbing structures shaped like zoo animals and a little gate to keep toddlers from wandering out. During operating hours, it was always packed. After close, it was just a dim corner of the mall, the foam animals crouching there in the overnight lighting, like strange little monuments, their painted eyes visible from the corridor. Raymond had walked past that play area hundreds of times. He was not an anxious person. He liked overnight security work precisely because he enjoyed the quiet, the methodical rounds, the feeling of having the whole place to himself. On a Thursday in late February, where he was 40 minutes into his second round of the night, when he came down the east corridor and saw, from about 60 feet away, a small shape moving inside the play area enclosure. His first thought was a child. Absurd, since how would a child get into a locked mall at midnight? But the shape was unmistakably small, and it was moving the way a child moves while playing. Slow, wandering, stopping, wandering again. He radioed dispatch as he approached. Dispatch told him to assess and report back. He reached the gate and shone his flashlight inside. A little boy was sitting on one of the foam animals, an elephant. He was sitting with his back to the gate, completely still now. 4 or 5 years old, red jacket, dark hair. Raymond unlatched the gate and stepped inside. He spoke softly, the way you talk to a scared kid. "Hey, buddy. I'm a security guard. I'm going to help you find your mom and dad." The boy didn't respond, didn't move. Raymond moved around the elephant structure to get a look at his face. The enclosure was empty. He described it as being less like the boy had run and more like the boy had simply stopped existing. There was nowhere to go. The gate was behind Raymond. The enclosure walls were solid, waist-high panels he could see over entirely from where he stood. No gap, no other door, no way out. He radioed dispatch. The operator pulled up the play area camera feeds. She asked Raymond how long he'd been inside the enclosure. He said about 2 minutes. She told him the camera showed him standing alone in there, and had shown the enclosure empty in the 30 seconds before he opened the gate, during which time Raymond himself had clearly watched a child sitting on the elephant from 60 feet away. He asked dispatch not to include the child in the incident report. He didn't want it on record. A few weeks later, he mentioned the play area to one of the older maintenance workers, a man who'd been at the mall since it opened. He kept it vague, just said the coroner had been feeling strange, asked if there was any history there. The maintenance worker looked at him a long moment and then said yes. Years before Raymond's time, a little boy had been separated from his family at the mall. The opening crew found him the following morning, hours after close, sitting on the elephant structure in the play area, not injured, not talking, and the only thing the boy said while they waited for his family was that he'd been playing with another little boy who'd shown him how to climb up. When they asked where that other boy had gone, the kid looked around like he expected to see him. Then he said, "I don't know, he was just here." Raymond retired the following year. He says on the nights when he can't sleep, and which are more frequent now, his mind goes back to the play area every time. To the red jacket, to the dark hair, to the way the boy had been sitting perfectly still, facing away from the gate, as if he'd been waiting for someone to come find him for a very long time. 3 stories, 3 places that were supposed to be ordinary. A mall is designed to be one of the most comfortable environments you can step into. Bright lights, crowds, noise, the smell of food. But take all of that away, empty it out, turn the lights down and lock the doors. And something shifts. Something in the wide corridors and cavernous atriums changes, the way a familiar face changes when you catch it in the wrong light. Most people who work those after-hours shifts go home with nothing to report. Most nights it really is just an empty building. But not always. Thanks for listening and stay safe out there.